When we think of the Roman Empire's fall, we imagine barbarian invasions, crumbling walls, and legions defeated in battle. But one of Rome's greatest enemies wasn't a sword or a siege engine, it was its own money. The empire that once mastered roads, trade, and taxation eventually collapsed under the weight of its own broken currency system. And the story of how it happened is a masterclass in how economics can kill an empire from within. In Rome's Golden Age, stability rested on the denarius, a silver coin introduced in the 3rd century BCE. For centuries, it held its value, making trade and taxation predictable. Soldiers were paid in it, merchants trusted it, and across the empire's vast provinces, it acted as the glue of the Roman economy. The strength of Roman money was a reflection of Roman power. But empires are expensive. Conquering new lands meant funding massive armies, paying administrators, and building the infrastructure that tied everything together. When Rome was expanding, new territories provided wealth through plunder and tribute, helping cover these costs. But once the expansion slowed by the 2nd century CE, Rome's expenses didn't stop. They grew. The empire still needed legions to defend its vast borders, bread to feed its cities, and monuments to maintain the illusion of eternal glory. That's when emperors turned to the easiest short-term solution, debasement of currency. Instead of raising unpopular taxes, Rome began reducing the silver content in the denarius. By the reign of Emperor Nero in the 1st century CE, the coin had already lost some of its purity. Over the following centuries, emperors repeatedly shaved off silver, replacing it with cheaper metals like copper. By the 3rd century CE, the once trusted denarius was barely a shadow of its former self. This slow erosion of trust had catastrophic effects. Inflation took hold. Prices for basic goods soared because merchants demanded more coins for the same product, knowing those coins held less silver. Soldiers who relied on steady pay grew restless when their wages couldn't keep up with the cost of living. The empire tried to solve this by minting even more coins, which only accelerated the cycle of inflation. The economic strain rippled through every part of Roman life. Farmers abandoned their land because taxes were demanded in fixed amounts of coin, even as the value of those coins fell. Trade shrank because long-distance merchants no longer trusted Rome's money and began demanding payment in kind, grain, livestock, or gold bullion. What had once been a vast, integrated economy started breaking apart into smaller, local exchanges. By the 3rd century CE, Rome entered what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Civil wars, invasions, and plagues shook the empire, but underneath it all was a fiscal system in freefall. To cope, Emperor Diocletian tried drastic reforms. He issued the Edict on Maximum Prices in 301 CE, attempting to freeze the cost of goods and services. But it backfired. Goods vanished from markets, trade went underground, and black markets flourished. Eventually, Rome shifted to a kind of command economy. Taxes were often collected in grain or goods instead of coins, and people were tied to their professions to guarantee production. These measures kept the empire limping along, but they also revealed a hard truth. Rome no longer trusted its own money. By the time the Western Empire finally fell in the 5th century CE, its currency had long since collapsed. The coin that once symbolized Roman power had become worthless, and with it, the complex economy that fed its legions, supported its cities, and sustained its dominance. In the end, Rome wasn't just conquered from outside, it was hollowed out from within. The lesson is clear. Empires don't just fall on battlefields, sometimes they fall in markets when the trust in money evaporates. Rome's currency collapse wasn't just an economic failure, it was the silent killer of an empire.